Here we go. Let's go with Ayn Rand's first definition. And it's her definition of definition. Okay, and this is what good old Ayn Rand said about definition. She says, a definition is a statement that identifies the nature of the units subsumed under a concept. Okay, so what does she mean by unit? What is this thing she calls unit? Let's see if we can find it here. Okay, and she says this is what a unit is. Okay, Ayn Rand says a unit is an existent, regarded as a separate member of a group of two or more similar members. She says, gives the example, 2 stones are 2 units, so are 2 square feet of ground. Well, 2 square feet is not a physical object. And to say, you could say the ground is an object, but you can't say 2 square feet is an object. But she says that 2 square feet is an existent, okay? And as far as rational science is concerned, 2 square feet is a concept. So she's saying that a concept is an existent. She's identifying it with an existent, and she's going to later on identify an existent with an entity, which she considers, which is another word for object, a synonym of the word object. And so let's see what an existent is according to Miss Ayn Rand, Mrs. Ayn Rand, by the way. The building block of man's knowledge is the concept of an existent, of something that exists. Okay, so an existent is something that exists. Okay, good. Be it a thing, an attribute, or an action. An action is something that exists. An attribute is something that exists. So now we have adjectives are things that exist. So people say, well, maybe you're being too precise, Bill. Yeah. We have to know whether Ayn Rand was using her terms rationally. And here we show that she's not using them rationally. Whatever her definition was, we show here that she does include concepts within her notion of existent. She's including something that exists, a thing, so far so good, but she should have stopped there. She should have put a period there. She continues, says, an attribute or an action. She's including adjectives and verbs. Those exist as well, according to her. To perceive a thing is to perceive that it exists. Perception tells us that something exists. Is that what the definition of exist is? Perception? Is that what we're saying here? We're saying that unless you can perceive it, it doesn't exist. Man grasps it implicitly on the perceptual level. She's talking about perception, which doesn't sound very much like objectivism. It sounds a lot like subjectivism. He grasps the constituents of the concept existent. Grasp? You mean like touching, like sensing? Knowledge that permits his consciousness to develop further. Knowledge, consciousness? Sounds like, the guy who senses things, the guy who grasps things, the guy who understands or knows. It's very subjective. I mean, I don't know how we're going to prove that God exists with all this grasp, knowledge, and consciousness bit. The concept existent is implicit even on the level of sensations. Now she's introducing the senses. If and to the extent that a consciousness is able to discriminate on that level. Now she's comparing things. And she continues, a sensation is a sensation of something. I hope she can sense a magnetic field, okay? As distinguished from the nothing. A sensation does not tell man what exists, but only that it exists. In other words, she's going to tell us, she's going to conclude that whatever exists is going to depend on what you can sense. She's going to introduce the senses, knowledge, cognition. Not very objective, really, because, I can't imagine a poor old blind man telling me, trying to convince him that the moon exists. I mean, he has no way of sensing it. So are we going to say that the moon does not exist for the blind man because he doesn't have the proper sensing, the eyes, equipment? So, we can't let it depend on the senses. And this is what you're going to see constantly, in Ayn Rand's so-called philosophy, okay? So where do we put this? Here we have Anything related to knowledge we call religion. Knowledge is opinion. That's what knowledge is. What you know, I don't know, or I don't agree with. You know that God exists, and I know that God doesn't exist. Well, so which of the two has knowledge? Are we going to submit it to a vote? We all vote and say, oh yeah, majority wins. 50% plus one of the humans on earth, they believe that God exists, so now we have knowledge. God exists, period. It's decreed by majority vote. And maybe next year we vote again and it goes the other way around. So now God doesn't exist. Poor old God gets slapped back and forth between existence and none. Consciousness, religion. Consciousness is a word that belongs strictly to religion. Anyone using the word consciousness is doing religion. That's simple. We have the Hare Krishnas down there at the bottom. That's where consciousness belongs in. Proof. You proved that God exists. How do you prove it? Proof is religion. Proof is a belief, is an opinion. Prediction, religion. Sensation, anything you can sense, is religion, because the quadriplegic, he can't sense anything with his hands, at least, blind man can't do it with his eyes. Deaf man can't do it with his ears. There's a untaste. I don't know. People who can't taste. You can't taste. Can't smell it. Okay. You got a cold. You don't smell it. It doesn't exist. The skunk doesn't exist for you because you can't smell him. Grasp, religion. All that's religion. Religion is the definition. Personal opinion, knowledge, fact, truth, belief in a theory. All those have to do with religion. Everybody, every human on earth has a religion. Everyone believes in something, some theory and whatever. It's your belief. It doesn't mean that everybody else believes in that same theory that you believe in that same explanation. And in science, we don't have facts. We have statements of the facts. And those are two different things that we're going to see throughout the series, right? Fact means that you're telling the crowd, you're saying you got to believe it because it's a fact. And I proved it, and it's knowledge, and I'm not going to let you challenge it. That's what fact means. On the other, and what truth also, proof, all those mean the same thing. Statement of the facts, you make an assumption of what you think the facts are. And you don't shove them down anybody's throat. And you say, look, let me assume that this was the initial scene, for example, in this murder case, right? So you're assuming that that was the case, okay? Not that you prove it and say, you got to take it as a fact, jury. You got to accept it as a fact because I proved the fact. No, we don't prove facts. In science, we only have statements of the facts, okay? Okay, let's move on here. So what's my definition of definition? Okay, and you wonder why I have the funny hat. That's because in 2017, 500 years since Martin Luther pinned his 95 Thesis on the doors of a church, I pinned my 95 Thesis, second revolution, right? On the doors, I did it symbolically, on the doors of Cambridge University, okay? So what is a scientific definition? One that can be used consistently. That's a scientific definition. You can use it consistently in a term, then people can follow your reasoning because you're using it consistently. Definition, a limitation placed on a word's utility or extent. Very precise, concise, okay, to the point. In science, we do not define objects, we point to them, okay? And in science, we do not define the word table. And, in her definition, let's see if I can get it back here, Ayn said, her second part there, let me put this one next to it. Okay, so you can compare them next to each other. She said, definition is a statement that identifies the nature of the units subsumed under a concept. Whatever that means, okay? Units, again, she was referring to objects. And she said the definition of table, an object, right? An item of furniture consisting of a flat, level surface and supports intended to support other smaller objects. No, that's a description. That's not what a table is. A table is what we point to. A table is what you drew. A table is that which has shape. That's what a table is. Okay, and that's where you can see the difference she's defining objects. In science, we do not define objects. We point to them and then describe them as Ayn did in this case. You can describe a table after you point to it, after you tell the ET, the extraterrestrial, what the word table refers to. That's the first thing you have to identify with objects. So no, in science, we do not define objects. We point to them and we illustrate them and we name them. Okay, that's what an object is, and it better have shape. And certainly you can't point to mass, okay? You can't point to energy and things of that nature.